Hello, and welcome to another live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed. This is a new channel. If it's your first time here, please hit subscribe. What else? Like the video if you like it. If you dislike it, go ahead and hit dislike. That's okay. And we have currently just an announcement. We have a locals, which I'm still figuring out, but we're going to master it. We have a locals, we have a subscribe start, and we have a Patreon. If you want to help financially support the show, we are going to be doing a book club in the locals. So if you've already subscribed on any of those platforms, just send me a note and we'll make sure you have an account in locals so you can be a part of the book club. And then the other announcement is April 24th. I'm going to be at the Better Discourse conference in Fort Worth, Texas. They're doing it in Texas again. And if you want to get tickets, there's all kinds of interesting people who are going to be speaking. James Lindsay, Mike Harlow, Libby Evans, Nikki Klein. So you can get tickets at betterdiscourseevent.com. Josh Slocum is going to be there. And I think that's it. Without further ado, please welcome my co-host today, Kamran Pasha. Hello, Kamran. How are you?
I'm well. I was just commenting before how very lovely orange you are today, and that's very good energy. It's a good color.
Oh, good.
It's second chakra, which is my favorite chakra, so I like it.
Well, what does that mean? Second chakra.
Let's just say it's the creative energy within the human form.
Oh, good. Okay. And what is black? I get the feeling that's not a positive.
There is. Well, I mean, I'm sure there in some like spiritual system, black is an energy. It's probably like, it's like, but it's not within the traditional sort of Western cool hippie chakra thing. It goes red, orange, yellow, green is the heart, blue is the throat chakra, sort of purple is the third eye, and then indigo is like the connection to God.
Yeah. What is your favorite color?
Well, my favorite color is red, but of the chakras, my favorite is the second.
Is orange. Oh,
yeah.
That's so interesting. I back when I was in social justice, I don't know if you've ever seen these pictures, but I looked at these like a year ago or so. I was looking at some of my old photos and I wore black all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I even consciously did it. I was attracted to it and I was kind of muted, and even my facial expressions were muted. Mm-hmm. And the past few years, I don't know, I'm drawn to a whole array of colors. Yeah. An appreciation for all different kinds of colors. So anyway,
colors are real energy, and they reflect what's going on inside of us. And so I went through my all black wearing phase in college, so I get it.
Yeah. There's a time and place. College is a good time.
College is a very good time for that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what college is anymore. I mean, I remember college in the early 1990s, and I don't think I can imagine what college life is like today. It's so bizarre from what I read in the news. It's incomprehensible to me.
I think it would probably be unrecognizable. We can actually talk about that today with part of our
topic. It leads into our topic about generations. It does.
Yeah. But before we do that, just tell people again where they can find you online if they want to follow you, and we'll.
Yeah, so best way to reach and contact me is I have a Patreon as well, which is actually pretty successful by God's grace. It's just Patreon / my name, Kamran Pasha. I'll throw a link into the chat. But yeah, that's I'm going to actually be taking a bit of a break from YouTube in April because it's going to be Ramadan. And so I've decided that part of my fasting is I'm going to cut off YouTube, which, aside from Carrie's wonderful channel, it can be a bit of a negative place. And so I need a spiritual reset. And so that's the best way to reach out to me and connect with me on through the Patreon. You can not only get all my insights on Hollywood and all that stuff, there's people on there, that get consulting. If you're a writer, screenwriter, novelist, I do consulting services through the Patreon. So you can all get fun stuff through me.
That's great. What a great idea to fast from just, a social media platform.
Well, it's a black hole, social media. Like I said, and I'm being honest when I say yours is one of the very few channels that I'm going to join on because we share spiritual values, and most of YouTube is all about how do I, say crazy things to get clicks.
Yeah, I've been recently. Just this morning, I was talking to a friend about there's this whole cottage industry of YouTubers, and it's not bound by any ideology. Although there are a lot of them who seem to be woke.
There's one ideology.
Yes, a whole cottage industry of like people who just their videos are just attacks on other people. That's all they do is now I'm going to take this person down. Now I'm going to take this person down. Take this person down.
All rage clicks. It's really ugly. It's just I've done a lot, as I do a lot of YouTube. I talk about Hollywood. I talk about Star Wars, things I care about. But And I've been doing that for about almost a year now. And in that year, I've watched the community devolve into something that is making me very uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. I can see some of that. Yeah.
And there's now, in my opinion, I'm seeing now open racism. I'm seeing all kinds of ugly things that are hidden behind, well, I'm a conservative. I'm like, hey, buddy, I'm a conservative. I'm not a bigot. I know the difference. There's a
Yeah.
difference. I know the difference. You're over the other line, right? So yeah.
Do you think some of that is people going? I've always been worried about with social justice becoming so mainstream, the kind of woke racism becoming so mainstream that there's that reaction that's going to happen where people go too far the other extreme. That's
It is happening, and that's what makes me sad. Is I'm like pointing out that like you're behaving exactly the way the woke portray you, right? And then I realize that there's, I mean, like just like in the cosmos that God created, there's two poles, right? There's always a duality to this cosmos, and so one pole is the woke racist, the other pole is the anti-woke racist, and then in the middle are just normal people, right? Who judge people individually and just like normal people. But these two poles are, as always, the two poles, the extremes are where the energy is. And someone pointed out to me that the way things work is that the extremes are a circle, right? They always meet. So the two poles end up being the same. Like fascism and communism are the same thing, right?
Yes.
Woke racism, anti-woke racism, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
One of the things, I had a very ugly conversation on this new Ms. Marvel show that's about to come out on Disney, and people ask me for my opinions. It's because of Pakistani female hero, and I've been very skeptical of the show. And then I really liked the trailer, and it was very meaningful for me. I thought it was a very entertaining trailer, and didn't see anything woke in it. And then when I would come onto some YouTube channels, people asked me my opinion. And when I said that, they started attacking me. And basically the point they were saying is that any elements of Pakistani culture that were shown about a Pakistani teenage heroine in this Disney show were divisive. So basically she just had to be white. And I was like,
oh, see, that's too far. That's like, there's a nuanced opinion. Like most of the people I talk to who are critical of wokeism in entertainment, for example, most of the people that I've talked about Battlestar Galactica with, the reboot, they liked some of the racial and gender changes. They at least didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah,
they didn't feel like it was woke
initially until they saw the new Starbuck was better than the original. It's just a better character.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. But so I think we might be getting to a place where instead of being open-minded, and it makes sense to me that people are becoming somewhat prejudiced ahead of time about what they're assuming is going to be a woke decision, and it's making it hard to take anything.
And the woke win as a result. The comments I got shocked me. What they were using the exact language that the woke had used a couple of years before. Specifically, people said, "Well, I'm not going to watch this Ms. Marvel show. It's not made for me. It's made for you Pakistanis." I was like, "That's exactly what Brie Larson said famously when she said, if you don't like this stuff that's not made for white males, well, this stuff isn't made for white males. It's not made for you. So don't comment on it. Don't watch it. Right? It's made for these minorities." And then the anti-woke were screaming, "See, this is racism." Entertainment should be universal. So I'm watching this Marvel trailer, and it's a pretty universal show. It's basically a Buffy the Vampire Slayer show from what I'm seeing in the trailer that just happens to have a Pakistani girl whose mom doesn't want her hanging out with boys. That's real, right? And so how's she going to be a superhero when the mom is like, no, you can't hang out with the boys and don't wear revealing clothing? That's real. I'm from smart culture, right? If a Pakistani person got powers, you'd have your mom hanging over you. Right? I mean, I don't like you hanging out with these weird superheroes and leotards. It's not halal. Right? I mean, that's what's going to happen, right?
Your costume is too revealing.
Your curves, that's real. And it's funny, but it's real. And people are like, well, it's not made for me. I'm like, well, Buffy the Vampire Slayer was made for you. This is just another kid who's isolated and doesn't feel good about herself, and has the Cordelia type character in the trailer who's like the pretty girl who makes fun of her, right? And so this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's universal. This is also universal. It's not universal because you're actually a racist. You don't want to see a brown girl, and the people are like, well, they didn't need to bring that. She did a Pakistani dance in part of the trailer. I was like, yeah, my sister does that dance.
But she's Pakistani.
Yeah, my sister does that dance. It's normal. I mean, you just
oh, man.
So I was like, you're using the same language as the woke. So you guys are the same thing.
Okay, you know what I'm going to do? You're forcing me. I'm going to watch this show now, so I see if I agree with you or not.
Yeah, I mean, look,
the
trailer is entertaining. Okay. If the show ends up becoming some virtue signaling thing, which I think the comic eventually became. The comic started off as a sort of that fun, entertaining, teenage Pakistani girl gets superpowers, right? And tries to still be teenage Pakistani girl in a Muslim religious household. And so that's fun. And then like some years into the process, it became like, well, let's talk about white male oppression, right? And I hope they don't take it there in the show. But the trailer doesn't have that. So if everyone's screaming, well, that's what they did in the comic, I'm like, well, I don't see it in the trailer. If it starts, I'll critique it. But I don't see it. I look at fun. I mean, I laughed because it was like, this is my life. This is my sister's life. It's my niece's life. If this is what would happen if my niece got superpowers. I mean, she would have all these restrictions that other superheroes wouldn't, right?
It's kind of funny. Hey, I'm going to put up this comment. Hi, G-Man. I'm trying to, it's always hard for me to read all the chat and pay attention to my co-host, Cameron. So I only see a few of these, but I saw this one. G-Man said, I still don't fully understand the difference between Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel. Are they supposed to be the same person?
No, it's like Green Lantern. There's a lot of Green Lanterns, right? And so this is someone who's inspired in the show, at least. It's someone who's inspired by the Captain Marvel character, right? But then actually gets her own powers and models herself, like her costume on Captain, on Captain Marvel. But she's a separate person with separate powers.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
she's
I wasn't
inspired by that. It's like somebody being inspired by Iron Man.
And then I think this is true. This is probably a little bit behind what's happening. Scott Miller says fans have been burned so many times that these creators have lost the benefit of any doubt. And
the
so
problem
people,
is when there's no doubt, when like there's nothing woke in the thing, you're like, well, then that's something else, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when some people freaked out that the Batman, which I really liked as a movie, had like one woke line in it where Catwoman says a stupid line, which she's like,
I heard about that line.
But it's one line out of a 4-hour movie.
still, I got it.
It was a stupid line, and the script was written in like 2018 when this was the norm. And it's just like, just go with it, man. The rest of the movie ain't that. But okay, but here, this is just a Pakistani girl dancing and getting superpowers and then being yelled at by her mom.
She's not saying anything about white privilege, is she?
Where's the doubt? I don't get where the doubt is.
Right. I'm gonna have to watch both. Then I'll tell you what I think. Hey, one more before we get into this topic. Just one more because I want to brag on someone. I Still Sample says, I love the Betty Boop intros. Hi, Carrie. Thank you. I'm glad somebody likes it. That's an old Betty Boop cartoon, which a lot of the Betty Boop cartoons are in the public domain now. And it's the one where Bimbo gets sucked into a cult. And the music, though, I have to brag on my husband. He made the music, and I love it. And if you like that little clip of a song, he's going to turn it into a full song, and then we'll put it out. I think at the end, I told him, I don't know what he's going to do, if there's going to be lyrics or anything, but I was like, what if you had no lyrics? And then at the end, like the song Tequila, you just say Deprogrammed, and that's it.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, so I always love talking to you, Cameron, and I was excited you could come back. And one of my friends was recently talking to me about Gen X and how this might make a good topic for a show. And I was like, of course I should do this with Cameron because you have a lot to say about Gen X.
I'm Gen X, right?
You are Gen X. So let's pull up, Cole, if you could pull up.
I think you're more millennial adjacent.
You know what? I was born, so I'm going to age myself. I was born in 78. So I'm technically Gen X, but I'm on that line.
Yeah.
And I was sort of millennial in some ways, because I was woke and these other things.
You bought into the story, yeah.
I bought into the story, but I no longer do that. And actually, I heard someone say that if you're on the line between two generations, that you know which generation you are just by a gut reaction. And if anybody asks me, it's like, what generation are you? I'm like, Gen X, duh. Like, that's who I am. And that's my reference point as well. I don't even know a lot of the movies that came after the 90s. I just kind of stopped paying attention, or singing groups and things like that. So, but I do want to talk about, there seems to be in the media, there have been several articles recently about how Gen X is particularly suited to address some of the cultural problems that we see around us. And what do you think about that? We can bring up one of these articles, or you can just get into it if you want.
Let's bring up where Generation X was coined, that wonderful book I had you do for the book club, right? The Fourth Turning. That's where the term was coined, right?
Oh, really?
Generation X was coined in that book, right? I think the millennials might have been coined in that book as well, because he was predicting what was coming, right? And so that book's thesis, as we talk, for those who haven't read the wonderful book, The Fourth Turning, which was written about 30 years ago and ended up predicting pretty much everything that happened today, right?
Yes.
It talks about the idea that there's in history, and specifically in American history, there's a 4-generation cycle of which culture changes. And at the end of the fourth generation, there's always what he calls a fourth turning, where there's a crisis where the whole civilization goes through major change or faces collapse and has to rebuild itself, right? And the first, the example, that's Revolutionary Wars, the end of the fourth turning of the colonists, right? Yeah. The Civil War is the end of the fourth turning of the first generation of Americans. World War II is a fourth turning after that. And then finally, he predicted 30 years ago that we're going through major crises, predicted a Trump-like figure would arise. He would predicted all these other stuff, right? And for this generation. And in that conversation, for this immediate stuff, he coined the boomers were essentially, in the cycle, in this 4-generation cycle after World War II, the boomers were the first generation. They're born right after World War II. They're the baby boom, right? And then the second generation would be Generation X. That's what he coined it. And what's interesting is he pointed out in his, essentially, I'm gonna give my interpretation / synopsis of the book, that there's these 4 generations, and generation 1 and 3 are the narcissist generation, and generation 2 and 4 are the slacker generation. It is, right?
And just so people know, what's 1 and 3 and what's 2 and 4.
So generation 1 is the boomers, the narcissist generation, right? Who are like, I'm going to live till 110 if I have to kill little children, if I have to do it, right? And make sure that's what a shock. That's how they started. That's how they're ending, right? I'm never going to die, right? That's, the whole world must end to make sure that I don't get threatened by a virus. I mean, that's the narcissist generation. They had to go out with the bang that they came in, right? It's all about me, right? The only reason I care about the Vietnam War is I don't want to get sent over there. Otherwise, I couldn't give a crap about these Asian people, right? I mean, let's just be serious.
Yeah. Hey, by the way,
no draft, nobody be protests, nothing.
Anybody who's in the chat who happens to be new to this channel, we are speaking in generalities. That shouldn't need to be said, but we're living in a time, but there's always that person, Cameron, who's like, well, I'm a boomer and I'm not like that. And it's like,
well, it's like the person in chat. Well, I didn't like Miss Marvel and I'm not a racist. Even though the clothing really irritated me, but I'm not a racist. There's always that guy. And then you look deeper into it, they fit into the generalization. Whenever someone protests, I says I'm not like that. If you're not like that, you don't
need to say it.
If you're not, if you are, it's because I hit a nerve. That's why. If you say it's because I hit a nerve.
Yes.
People say to me, well, all everyone in Hollywood is, this woke, atheist. I was like, it doesn't make me react because I'm not that. I know that. So let's keep the conversation going. Yeah. I'm not that.
You're exactly right.
It's that scene in The Life of Brian. Remember the movie The Life of Brian, right?
Yes.
And so there's that great scene where he's like, everyone in the crowd outside thinks he's a messiah, and Brian, and they're all, he's like, he's like, they're all like screaming the Messiah. And he's like, listen to me. You don't have to follow me. You're all individuals. And they all scream, we are all individuals. Right? And this one guy, the crowd goes, I'm not. I mean, that's what it's about. Let's get serious here.
I have to rewatch that. You're making me think of this Southern phrase. It's like, what is it? A hit dog hollers. The hit dog. Have you ever heard that?
No, what's that mean? What does that mean?
It means a hit dog.
Hollers. Oh, hit dog hollers. Like when you got hit by the car or whatever.
Yeah. So if you're hollering, like, you're not talking about me, it's like,
it's not about me.
I think it hit you.
It does, whatever. So yeah, generalities, blah blah. We're talking about generalities. That book talks about generalities. But guess what? Human beings are that. We are not individuals crowd. That's what we are, right? Kind of silly, but that's what we are. So the generalization is that the first generation is a narcissistic generation.
Okay.
That takes up all the resources and all the attention and doesn't care about anybody else. And then they're the parent generation of the next generation, which is the X generation, which is because they've got these narcissistic previous generation that doesn't care about them. They're completely isolated because not even allowed to participate in the conversation. It's all about the boomers, boomer, blah, 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 blah. And so they check out. They check out and they become the Breakfast Club. They're just like, well, screw you, right? The Breakfast Club is a movie because the teacher is the boomer who's sitting there lecturing them, blah, blah, feel good about himself. And they're all off doing their own thing, right? And so
it's like the latchkey generation. Right. You stay home and
I was a latchkey kid, yes. Like my mom and dad are out working. I come home from school. We're making ourselves dinner until they get home. You'd go to jail now if you left your 10-year-old kid home alone until 5:00 in the afternoon. You'd go to jail.
Yeah, they left us alone. We played on metal slides at McDonald's.
64, whatever.
Yeah, So Gen X is, just to reiterate this, is sort of, they're not the narcissistic generation. They're the slacker generation that came after. So in this book, which was an excellent book, and I do recommend it for anyone who hasn't read it, it's called The Fourth Turning. It talks about how even if you don't believe that, like the thesis of the book is that you can look at time as something cyclical and not just linear. But even if you don't believe
that, the Bible
that,
says, doesn't it? Didn't
yes.
Solomon say that? Nothing
yes.
new under the sun, right?
Right. But even if you don't believe that, it makes the case that generationally you're going to see responses to the previous generation because everything is, action and response, action and reaction. Just like you'll see in an individual family, the way that a kid might react and become different than their parents, so Gen X was sort of reacting to the boomers, and it was this sort of slacker, leave us alone generation. And then came the millennials and how they just
generation 1 and 3 are the narcissist generations. So then the millennials come, and now what it is now you've got the next generation, which is now being doted upon by their, the first generation, which is these are their grandkids. And now they're going to spoil them, and they're going to, the same kids that they ignored who are now giving birth to these children, right? Are the kids that the narcissistic grandparents are now like, you can't hurt my little baby. You can't tell them this. You can't tell them that, right? He wants to be a girl today. He can be a girl today. And that's the process, right? I'm going to give something because we're open about spirituality here on the show. So I'm going to give a story from my religious traditions. There's a story about Islam's prophet Muhammad, where he has these grandchildren are very famous, Hassan and Hussein, for which his lineage continues. None of his sons survived. His daughter, Fatima, is through which his lineage continues. I'm actually a descendant of Fatima through his grandson, Hussein. So that's my ancestry. But so he had these two grandsons, and he loved them very much. And, they would say that when he would be praying, they would all climb on his shoulders, and he wouldn't like move them aside. He would do all the movements of prayer while he kept them on his shoulders, right? And so there's a story, and this gives the example, the story of once the two children, the grandchildren, were being naughty, and their father, Ali, who's Fatima's husband, their father tries to discipline them. And the Prophet Muhammad goes, these are my children, leave them alone. Don't any grandparent, like, don't hurt my little children, right? Don't yell at them. And so Ali, being a follower, goes, Prophet of God told me I can't discipline my kids. Never going to discipline my kids again. And then in the Islamic story, the angel Gabriel appears to the Prophet and goes, that's not right. He has a right to discipline his children, or they're going to become naughty. You have to stay out of it. You're the grandparent. It's not your child. And you have to let the father discipline the children. So that's a story coming out of the Islamic tradition that represents this type, right? Of the Prophet himself has to be lectured. Don't interfere in a parent's, because a grandparent will never let the grandchild represents the successful. It's not the child, it's the grandchild that represents the successful reproduction, because now you've got two generations. Now the gene's going to spread, right? And so there's an instinct for grandparents to really preserve that grandchild, right?
Yeah.
Whereas they're going to be hard on their own kids, right? That's just human.
So interesting.
So that's an archetypal story that gives this thing that happened. And the boomers start over nurturing their grandkids, who becomes the millennials. And so the next narcissistic generation. And the millennials are self-absorbed. So when the next generation comes around, it's these poor Generation Z kids who are zoning out, just like X. X and Z love each other. We get it. We're like, what's going on here? Who are these crazy people?
I like this simplification. It makes sense. I think it's why it's being memed in the way that it is. And
it's true. Our heart knows it's true.
We can actually pull up some of these memes. Cole, let's start with the memes. Then we can go back to the articles. Let's start with something fun, though. I want to look at some of the memes. Before that, I'm just going to put this up quickly. We got our first super chat today. We do have super chats now, FYI. G-Man says...
Let's hear this. Yeah.
G-Man says, I wish I was a latchkey kid. I got locked out of the house and had to wait for my mom to get home.
You're an external latchkey kid, right? Because could you imagine someone is like getting locked out of their house today? You'd have the police and the fire department there, right? Like, 10-year-old kid being locked out of their home, the whole world would end. Like, all the neighbors would have like a gathering and a candlelight vigil, right? It's
CPS would be called. Yeah.
Yeah, the parent would be dragged away to court and whatever. And it's like, you didn't give your kid. So whatever. Here we go.
Okay. Now I'm going to try and narrate some of these for the people who are just listening. So it's exactly the movie you talked about. It's Breakfast Club. It's a picture from the Breakfast Club. And the meme says, just remember, for every boomer that hates a millennial, there's a generation in between that hates you both.
That's the book.
Yes.
That's the book, right? And the book said that the crisis of the fourth turning, when the civilization faces potential collapse, is created by the first and the third generation in conflict. It's created by the boomers and the millennials in conflict. And then the second generation, X, he predicted this. He said Generation X will have to actually solve the problem, even though it doesn't want to. It doesn't want the responsibility of it.
But it's going to have to.
Narcissist generations fighting each other, which is exactly what we're watching. He said this 30 years ago.
Here's another one.
It's perfect.
It's good. At the top, you've got two screaming ladies. One is from that meme of the woman screaming with the cat eating dinner.
Yeah.
I don't know what that meme is, but I've seen it a lot. Anyway, she's screaming. And then you've got Xena Warrior Princess screaming, and it says boomers and millennials. And then at the bottom, you've got, it looks like
pouring wine into this like little kids, pumpkin for Thanksgiving, right? So
Gen X and Gen Z, and it's Karen from Will and Grace pouring wine in this little kid's jack-o'-lantern.
We both get it. We're like, look, these are the two clowns. They're the ones that dominate the media. They're the ones that dominate the national discourse and global discourse. They're the ones that are locking us all down and forcing us to whip crap on our faces because they're afraid of life even more than they're afraid of death, right? And so we're just gonna have to get through this crap.
Yeah.
It's like what we're going through right now is just because you sent me that message about that article about the Cold War. Maybe we'll get to, which is now like there's another Cold War. I was like, we went through this crap already. We went through this Cold War. Listening to this stuff in school, watching The Day After. Remember The Day After when we were kids?
Yes. Okay, so yeah, I sent this article to Cameron. Let's pull that one up now, Cole, if you don't mind. Let's pull up the one about the Cold War. I think that's the Guardian one. And so, yeah, here we go. The Cold War terrors are back, baby. And Generation X finally has something to offer the young. Okay, so
just have a drink. It's beyond your control. There's nothing you can do about it.
When I sent it to you, Cameron, you said, here's the advice I would offer Gen X. What did you say?
What was my text? I don't remember what I said. I think I said to them, basically just become like the Breakfast Club, just zone out. I mean, you can't solve this thing, right? Because that's what we went through, is that this is drama created by the two narcissistic generations. The world is ending. We might die. Our precious selves might die. And we're sort of like, whatever, fine.
Here's what you said. My advice to the young on how to survive the Cold War 2.0. Do what we did. Wear jean jackets and make some great music.
Yeah, that's it. All right, the world's ending. Let's get some cool styles here. Let's get some great music, because there's nothing we can do about that. And guess what? The world didn't end. It's just two narcissistic generations making drama. That's what it is.
You could have written this article in one sentence.
That's okay. I always bring everything down to one sentence,
She writes a lot. Well, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. So she says, she talks about the age of Gen X, and then, okay. Generation X teens coming of age in the 1980s also did so in the shadow of a prophesized nuclear winter. Scientists realized the destruction of atomic war would pump so much soot into the atmosphere that descending cold darkness would cause global crop failure and famine.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever.
All this was learned at the height of a Cold War in which Chernobyl was melting down, and the then Soviet states in the West had literally thousands of warheads pointed at one another. We were just kids and generationally powerless to do anything about it. They didn't call Gen X the bleak generation for nothing. The fear of annihilation saturates the cultural products consumed by Gen X as young people. We were given children's books about nuclear horror, Z for Zachariah, Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes.
We had that movie that maybe people don't know, the Day After, which was on like prime time at like 8 o'clock, and then I had to talk about it in my like 6th grade class. We had to write an essay about it, right? So we all have to watch this thing, which is all about what happens after there's a nuclear war and the survivors. And you're like, you're 12 years old, you're like, oh, whatever, I gotta write an essay about this. Oh, and it's really horrible and whatever, and everyone is starving and dying, and there's a horrible flash of light, everyone's disintegrated. You're just get desensitized to this crap.
Desensitized, yes. Everything was like, you're gonna die. Also, here, play on this metal slide at McDonald's. I still can't get over that because everything's plastic now.
This generation, what is the anthem of Generation X? It's Prince's 1999. The world's gonna end, so we might as well listen to my body now, right? That's the song, 1999, because that's where the world's gonna end, right? So I'm gonna listen. If the world's gonna end, I'm gonna listen to my body tonight. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, listen to this, Cameron. There's a few more here. She mentions the graphic novel "When the Wind Blows." She talks about with music. She says those seeking empathy for reawakened terror today may wish to revisit tunes like Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Two Tribes, OMD's Droll Enola Gay. I don't know that song. Billy Bragg's Help Save the Youth of America. Nina's hit 99 Luft Balloons.
Oh, that was a great song. If you guys, and the thing is, the funny thing is, it's a great song in German. And it's an even better song in English. It was sung in German, right?
Yeah.
But it's more poetic in English.
That is a great song,
better, right? But those who don't know that song, go play it on. It's basically this song about, you know, and it was inspired. The singer had been at the Berlin Wall. Remember the Berlin Wall, right? You know, there was a Berlin Wall. Remember those days? I miss the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall, and she saw like some little kid had a little floaty balloon, red balloon, and she let go, and the balloon floated over the Berlin Wall to the other side, to the communist side of Berlin, and an image came to her mind. It's like, what if that balloon were to trigger like a
nuclear war?
Yeah, what if we triggered like an invasion alert? And that's what happens is in songs about somebody letting go 99 red balloons, and the computer thinks that they're invading missiles and sets off a nuclear war. And it was a great song. It's a great beat. and the point of the song is the end is she's just standing there alone, surviving in this wasteland that was a city, right? And being wistful about it. That's Generation X. We couldn't stop it. Nothing we do about it. We're just gonna build from what we got now.
Tara T says, I liked it best in German. I like both, but you're right. It's very classically Gen X because she's singing about, I mean, it may as well be, you know, 99 red balloons. We're all going to die and it's okay because I can't sing the song and da-da-da. And you're just like, it's okay.
I mean, that's why the 80s had the best music because of this garbage. That's why I've been saying for some time the 20s is going to be the roaring 20s again. These kids, these little kids who have to wear masks for the last 3 years in high school are going to make the best music about like how life sucks and you just got to make the best out of it. And my stupid parents were making me wear a mask while they're running around. Like yesterday, I was stupid. I'm watching. It really drove me crazy. I'm walking down the street. These two overweight, you know, women with their kids, their little 5-year-old kids. These are overweight women who are not wearing their masks. They're clearly, they're clearly making themselves like in a risk category, but they got to make their 5-year-old kids wear masks. You know, it just made me really angry. And that's what these kids are. And they intuitively know there's something wrong and it's unjust. They're seeing a world that's unjust and they're going to grow up and respond to that.
I hope you're right. I think you might be, that there's going to be this. And certainly the book, The Fourth Turning, talks about this, that there's going to be this artistic renaissance, this new artistic and intellectual enlightenment where people come back to free expression and come back to this place of just more freedom.
Yeah, because that's why you're seeing, like, I was so delighted to see in the last few months, it was teenage kids in high schools that started doing walkouts in California about this mask stuff, when they realized and they would put up pictures of Newsom partying and, you know, without his mask in the you know, thing, and these different mayors having all these cool things without their mask, but they're forcing these 15-year-old kids to wear, and the kids organize walkouts. I haven't seen walkouts since like the 60s, right? But these kids, they're not just doing it because I'm a teenager and rebelling, which is part of it. They're doing it because they know it's wrong. They know it's wrong. Why are you making us do this thing? You're obviously a bunch of clowns who are making up rules for yourselves and for us. It's wrong. And that's the fire of the next generation.
Look at this. People in the chat are giving some suggestions. John Small says War Games. Remember that movie?
Oh, yeah. And how does War Games end? How does War Games end? Because it's all about the terror of the world ending. And how does it end? It ends by basically just telling the computer, we'll game it out. What happens if you actually play this game? Everyone dies and there's no way to win. And the computer shuts off. That's it. There's nothing they had needed to do. They didn't need to do anything because it would solve itself. And that's
Lissa Kay says, "We didn't start the fire" was the ballad of my generation.
Correct.
Yes.
That's Billy Joel. And exactly, he's listing all these things, right? And he's like, we didn't start the fire. There's nothing we can do about this. We're just going to live, you know?
Okay. I'm going to return to this article just for a second. Mm-hmm. So she's talking about how Gen X, all of our art kind of referenced this. What's the word that you use? We had become desensitized to it, to this sort of threat of nuclear annihilation.
When the world is always ending, you eventually stop caring.
Right. And this cynicism. And so then she ends it with, this is the only part I don't agree. This is where it gets ridiculous. Okay. She says, she mentions that movie, The Day After, that we all watched.
Right. Yes.
And she says, that Reagan himself reportedly credited the day after as inspiring him to sign the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty with Gorbachev in 1987.
That was the PR thing the White House did put out. I'm sure it had nothing to do with reality, but that was, I remember, a press release the White House put out because they wanted to be cool with Hollywood at the time.
Right. So then she says this movie was a masterpiece and, quote, an unforgettable lesson in true horror. And she says that Putin needs to watch it.
I would suggest Americans need to watch it. Putin knows exactly what he's doing. Americans don't know what they're doing. They're like, I've seen all these people on Twitter. It's like, let's shoot down Russian jets. Yeah, I was like, that's gonna end well. Yeah, you see congressmen saying crap like that, right? Like this Ratzinger guy, whatever his name is, right? Ratzinger, I think that was a pope, whatever. Rinsinger, whatever this guy's name is. Congressman, like, we gotta shoot down Russian jets. I was like, dude, you're a congressman.
Yeah, crazy.
Even said that in 1982. That's crazy. Shoot down Russian jets means you're gonna have a nuclear bomb dropped on New York City, right? One Russian jet shot down by an American jet is the end of the world.
Yeah.
Right? So, but we're having people say this, so maybe you should all watch The Day After again, because that's kind of the movie. Literally, the movie. It's actually very interesting because in the movie, if remember, it was the event that causes it is that there's rioting, in Berlin, and Berlin's getting out of control, and the Russians move across the Berlin Wall. They send troops over the Berlin Wall to quell it, right? And that's what causes, quick seconds after, Americans, you're going to cross the Berlin Wall, we're going to fire nukes. So they fire nukes, the Russians fire nukes, and it's over, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but that's the event. It's like, it's like people forget, like, okay, if the Russians encroach on territory, there's got to be a better way to handle it than direct confrontation because it ends like this, right?
You make a good point. I haven't seen that since I was a kid. I should rewatch it. Yeah. And like you, I kind of scoffed at her saying Putin should watch it as if he doesn't.
Oh, he's fully aware. He's like, this guy, look, I have an ex-girlfriend, former girlfriend in Ukraine. I called her the night that this started on the 22nd, mm-hmm. and she was scared out of her mind because I could hear the stuff in the background. Like I called her on FaceTime, and she was on her way. She ran to her mom's place, and then I didn't hear from her for 10 days. I didn't know what was going on. And then I got a call from her. She was in Romania. She crossed the border with her sister and her little niece by foot into Romania, and I have friends in Romania, and I was like, she's like, no, I've got some people that are taking care of me, and but she's a refugee now. So people are like, oh, I'm like, oh, I have someone I care about deeply in that situation, right? At the same time, now I know what's happening there politically, and I know what started this. It's not her fault that her life is being turned upside down, but it is the politician's fault that this got to this place.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say just quickly, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. I just, the idea that Putin just doesn't know the repercussions of nuclear war. And if we just showed this to him, it makes me think of that. Did you see that video from that actress, Cameron, who was she did this poem and she read it.
Like, if I were your mommy, I would have nurtured you. I'd have loved drugs, and you wouldn't be like this. I'm like,
it's just so cringe.
His mommy would be like, in real life, his mommy's like, look at our geopolitical situation, young Vladimir. We have no natural defenses in this area, and we have been invaded throughout history from the Mongols and from this and from that. So if Ukraine belongs to an adversary, they have a direct hard right to Moscow. That's what his mother would have taught him because she would have understood geopolitics.
You're funny. Okay, let's move on. I want to show one more. Cole, can you pull up the article called 5 Gen X Values from the 90s that can save today's world? And then we're going to read through some of these values and see if we agree. And then we're going to add a few of our own. Okay. So this is on Upworthy. And if you scroll down at the bottom, you have to click keep reading. And then you go into some of these. Now, this is kind of interesting. They say, according to a generational differences document circulated through the business community, Gen X's core values are skepticism, fun, and informality.
Correct. All those are correct.
All correct. They're described as self-reliant, independent, unimpressed with authority, and motivated by freedom.
Correct. All of those are actually accurate. And but this is what's fascinating. We're watching this phenomenon that the 420 is talking about. The media, without even realizing it, they are now seeing what's coming, which is our generation, which had these values, will automatically impart those values to the Z generation, right? Which needs them right now because they're trapped in a world created by their predecessors, the millennials, which is a ridiculous world. Mm-hmm. The only way out of it is to just not participate in it.
Well, this suggests that we try and impart these also not just implicitly, is that the word, but explicitly. Like we just tell Gen Z, this is what we need to do.
Well, of course we
And
do.
the
I
yeah,
do that with like my friends' kids who are like, who are going through this crap, and I'm just basically telling them, don't listen to your dumb teacher who's like telling you you're gonna die of this virus. Start living. I say that to these like 8, 9-year-old kids who are like, with their parents are obviously comfortable with me saying that to them, but I'm the cool uncle who can tell them the truth, right? Which is that don't participate in this clown show. Right,
yeah.
your teacher is telling you, your teacher, and it's really funny because I remember my teacher, Mrs. Hoyes. I love Mrs. Hoyes. She was ultimate example of boomer. Like she was my third grade teacher, and I loved her. When I graduated college, I called her. I found her and called her and said, "Thank you. I just graduated college. You inspired me." Blah blah. But she was the ultimate boomer. This was like 1981, and she would be sitting there still wearing her peace symbol from the hippie days, right?
Aw.
And singing like hippie songs on her guitar in our third grade class. I
Aw.
songs of 60s, right? I mean, she was imparting her craft to us, right?
She's a character.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she's not completely unself-aware because she's a boomer.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read part of this too. So, in the young Gen Xer, the culture of the era instilled a wariness and skepticism and a kind of figure it out for yourself mindset. And with that came a sense that you don't have to shine a light on yourself. You're not the center of the universe.
The anti-narcissist generation.
Right. But things have changed since the 90s when Gen X was coming of age. We live in an American culture that is fractured by political partisanship, fueled by a constant culture of outrage, crippled by a preoccupation with technology, plundered by greedy boomers, and annoyed.
Boomers versus the narcissism of the millennials.
Yes.
The two that created the conflict that the 420 said was going to be created.
Yep. Plundered by greedy boomers and annoyed by overly sensitive millennials. All of this is happening while we face the greatest challenge of our times. Now, this is where I depart with this article, climate change. Okay, let's just skip over that.
I bought into this climate change stuff until I actually started looking into it. Just, and I have to actually thank the last 2 years because when you're like, well, the same character that was wrong about everything about the virus and the lockdowns is the same institute that put out the climate change model. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Right? So all the last 10 years, I was listening to this institute that I now know is fraudulent on this. So why weren't they fraudulent on that? Right? And they're using the same computer models that predict things that never happen. Okay.
You're bringing up a great point because climate change is one of those things I haven't spent the time researching it enough to know what I think about it. However, the past couple of years with everything I learned about the media and COVID and how wrong they were about so many things and how they would push propaganda, like you, I've become very highly skeptical about it. And so I kind of want to go back and revisit that and just see.
Well, go back to, remember when we were kids, we kept hearing about the ozone layer?
Yeah.
And they would even do like satellite images. There's no ozone layer. Where the hell's the ozone? Nobody's talking about it anymore. Looks like the ozone layer is fine, right? It's like that didn't happen, right? And so I remember even more the 70s. With the 70s, there was the acid rain thing. That might even be before your age. I remember watching all these like, environmental commercials when I was a little kid in my apartment in Brooklyn in 1977. And they were all about acid rain. Well, we never hear that about it. Where's the acid rain, right? And so it's just the
terror. Yeah.
Well, we're all dying from acid rain, and the phenomenon is that I mean, from what I've studied of it, I don't need to make this a climate change discussion. Throughout recorded history, climate changes because that's the nature of the planet, right? It's cyclical, like history. It's the nature of the planet, and so it is our narcissism that believes that we caused this current phenomenon, and then as a result, we can change this current phenomenon. This is God's history. The Sahara was once green. When the pyramids were built, it was a green area. Right, it was closer to like the Amazon than it is today, a desert, right? And nobody did that, right? That's just the history of the world, which balances itself out in different ways. And so, but it is our belief in our own sort of atheistic power over the cosmos that we can control the weather,
and therefore we need to allow the government to control us.
Correct.
I definitely
taxes. It will save the world from this global climate change. Our higher taxes will do it.
Yeah, I definitely have to spend some time reading about it. There's too many other things that interest me right now, so I'll just put myself in the skeptical category and leave it at that. But it is interesting the way they're constantly pushing this lately. And so even in this piece, it says it's talking about Gen X, all the great qualities of Gen X, which is one of those is skepticism. It mentions that twice, and then it says, "But climate change," and you're like, "I thought you just said that we're skeptical." And that we should be skeptical.
The writer's a millennial. The writer's a millennial, right?
Probably.
And so they're unself-aware. It's like asking somebody to see outside their paradigm, right? You're asking somebody to look outside the box. They can't do it. They're not even aware of it.
No, this person's Gen X. So
Okay.
she
And you're a
says,
traitor. You're a traitor.
she says also, I must admit that this message is for Gen Xers as well. Many of us have lost our way by forgetting our disdain for authority and skepticism towards institutions. Okay, so but let's move on. Let's go into these. I'm going to read these, and then when I'm done, you tell me about each one what you think. So number 5, these are some. She says these are some top 5 Gen X values that we need to embrace again. Number 5, buying vintage items. I already know I'm on board with this.
Well, look, you're the living example of that. So next, this is proof. You know why? Yeah. You know why? It's because beneath, I'm going to give a profound analysis here. Beneath our nonchalance and our we don't care, we're the Breakfast Club, is a lot of pain, which was the truth of the Breakfast Club, right? And we're looking for the security of a past that we were never given. We're looking for the security of the past that allowed the boomers to be jerk-offs. These Generation Z people will long for the security that allowed these millennial jerk-offs to create a crappy world for them, right? And so that's why we look to the past, because it's like looking for mommy. We never had it.
That's an amazing insight, and I have to think about it more. But yes, I love old things. Mm-hmm. I don't like the idea of old things not having a loving home, even though they're just things. And
that's us. That's us.
And I have so many. So we have, we bought this old house and we're currently renovating it, and I have too many old Victorian couches to even fit in it, and I have to stop, because if I see a good deal on like Facebook Marketplace, I'm like, how could you get rid of that for $100? It's beautiful. Just need somebody to give it some love.
Well, see, for me, I'm a Roaring '20s guy. I've got these Tiffany lamps in my home.
Oh yeah.
I'm like a flapper at heart, right? Because that's what I am, right? And so. Yeah.
Oh, Cameron, once we get our place fixed up and you come visit, put you in the room with an old radio we have this tall radio from the 20s, and just like all those old, our friend Josh Slocum, he loves the old Gone with the Wind lamps. I have a bunch of those lamps, just like, collecting old, you're right. There's probably something there. It's this idea that this beautiful old history, somebody needs to love it. And my dream would be to get to a place where I can open a little shop where I just have old things that I've collected that I can't, because I can't justify putting them in all in my house. So it's they're in my shop
with others. Yeah, no, and,
right.
But these were all crafted at a time when people had the luxury to do them. While we're just trying to survive, these people had a peaceful enough environment to spend time to create something beautiful, right?
Yes.
And we didn't have that, and so we long for it.
They built things to last. They took time, like you said. I found an old mixer in a thrift shop. One of these, it's Sunbeam. I forget the other name to it. But anyway, glass bake bowls. And this mixer is put together so well. It's from the 50s or 60s. I got rid of my new one, which was a piece of crap compared to this one. It's like, okay, I'm just going to keep this old one.
But technology never gets better. Like, Microsoft Word 1 was better than Microsoft Word 24, whatever we're using, right? It just gets worse, right? And that's why we long for the past, because it's not about improving anything. It's about keeping people employed, so they have to screw things up, which is the whole progressive movement. Everything's fine, so you got to screw it up so you can have progress, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why the past is better, because these weren't people that were trying to screw anything up. They were just trying to create.
So let's move on to number 4. Mm-hmm. Another value of Gen X that would help save the world. Number 4, corporate skepticism.
Well, yeah. I mean, the joke that we're seeing right now play out in Hollywood is all these millennial liberals spent the last decade telling us that corporations need to get out of politics. It's dirty money. We don't want them influencing politics. And now they're like, Disney has to spend its money in Florida against his bill, right? And we're going to boycott the company. It's like, did you just say that Disney shouldn't? Because Bob Chapek, the head of Disney, just said, you know what? We're just going to not give money to any corporate. We're going to get out of politics, which is what you wanted. We're not going to give money to Republicans. Yay! We're not going to give money to Democrats. What? I saw that on Twitter. Like, I'm banned from Twitter, but I can still watch it. This kid. I mean, I'm a Dartmouth grad, so embarrassing. This kid's a Dartmouth student. He's like a big loudmouth leftist, right? Who's like a spokesman for the young Democrats, whatever the hell he is. And he put out this tweet, and it became like this famous tweet. Put out a tweet saying, "At last, when Bob Chapek said we're pulling money out of, we're not going to give any more political donations to Florida, right?" And he's so excited. And then literally 1 hour later, he posts, "We didn't, but they're not giving any money to Democrats either. That's immoral." It's just
wow.
tweets with this famous Twitter account, Define L's, which compares people's before and after.
Yes.
Put that out there, right? And just said this is like a record. Within 1 hour, he contradicted himself because he's like, no money to politicians, but only politicians I don't like. So I mean, that's this kind of fraudulence, right? That we're going back to this thing here, which is don't trust the corporations, because these clowns are now, the millennials are saying the corporations are our way to save the world.
It's so let me say something about this. So I came up around the same time as you, and I came up on the left, and we had a great disdain for corporations and a great mistrust and skepticism towards them. And then something happened. The corporation, so once the culture became, and the left in particular, became more woke, so liberalism was being eaten and pushed out by this leftist authoritarianism, this woke ideology.
It's Maoist, right. Maoist cultural revolution stuff.
It's Maoism, yes. Yeah. So while the liberalism was being pushed out and woke ideology was becoming more prevalent, the corporations realized if we start speaking woke, then we can appeal to this very cynical market that doesn't like us. And so they all started speaking it in the past few years. You've got McDonald's, you've got Target, you've got Amazon. Every corporation is like systemic racism and, anti-racism and trans, trans women are women. And they're all, and you would think that Gen Xers that we would be skeptical enough to see through that, but I'm shocked by some of the friends who haven't. I saw a friend a few years ago when they first started doing all this woke advertising. I noticed it was during the Super Bowl. This was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It started a while back. And there was a Procter & Gamble ad that had nothing to do with their products. It was just about racism. And it had nothing to do with what they're selling. And then I had friends on social media who were like, OMG, this Procter & Gamble ad made me cry. Like, I love it. And it's like, dude, it's a corporate. They're cynically using your emotions. What's wrong with you?
Well, but you see that what it is it's just Maoism, which is cynical, right? Maoism is a cynical ideology, which is basically use whatever instrument you have to achieve the ideology, right? And the ideology is subversion for its own sake, right? Mm-hmm. It is destroy everything and rebuild it. And so if you can use a corporation to achieve that objective, why wouldn't you? Because the goal is not some consistent ideology. Like liberalism is at least a consistent ideology, right? Maoism is about destroying everything to start all over, right? With, of course, the person doing it in charge, right? And so you use every instrument. If your goal is destruction, it would be foolish to not use every instrument society provides you. Use everything you got.
Yeah. I'm going to put up, before I read number 3, just so I don't get too behind. Thank you guys for the super chats. This is I'll Fight You Naked says, I'm a latchkey Generation X. Now I understand why I have to fight the urge to kill the very old and very young and people with bug eyes or who say like a lot. Like.
Well, yeah, but like, let's deconstruct like, right? We said like all the time. It's because we understood the power of analogy, right? We understood we were poets at heart, and poets are all about analogy. Metaphor, simile. We understood that. Where do poets come from? They come from pain. That's why we said like. I just made that up right now. And it sounds really good.
It sounds profound. I wouldn't know. I would know.
Right now. It sounds really, see what happens with me, Carrie, is I just talk and I let like you Christians say, let the spirit move me, and then shit comes out of my mouth. Like, that's really good. Let's go with that. That's how I write too.
Write that down. Okay, so Tara T, thank you, Tara T, says, I'm a Gen X mom with young Gen Z kids. My kids are being raised red-pilled. Lord have mercy.
Well, Lord have mercy upon the world that's going to get your kids, because they're going to be the leaders. The leaders are the ones that understand how the world works. And they're the ones that are going to pull us out of this garbage, right? Yeah, Generation 2 and Generation 4. They're the saviors every time. Generation 1 and Generation 3 are always the troublemakers.
I'll Fight You Naked. Thank you. I'll Fight You Naked again. Says, I hope a solar flare hits the reset button. Thank you.
Well, but that's a fascinating thing. So, I'm going to go on a random thing here. For example, like, I'm very much a traditional economics guy. I'm in Austrian economics, Ludwig von Mises, right? Believe in, free markets and a decentralized banking system and all that stuff, which is traditional, which we don't have, right? We don't have that, right? And So I believe in things like the gold standard. I believe in that. And now we're understanding why you need something like the gold standard, because mass inflation is what's happening when you've got a piece of paper that's not worth anything. The reason I'm bringing this up is that now everyone, particularly the millennials, is jumping on Bitcoin. And I understand the logic of Bitcoin. There's probably Bitcoin investors here and people who've made money on it. I absolutely understand the logic of Bitcoin. It's essentially kind of electronic version of a controlled currency, like a gold-backed currency. Makes perfect sense, right? I support the philosophy of that. The one challenge with that is you got one solar flare that wipes out all the computers. What are we going to do? Your Bitcoin's gone. Gold and silver are still around. And that's happened throughout history, right? It's happened. The last solar flare that missed us, that would have wiped out civilization, was 2012, good old 2012. NASA announced that a solar flare that would have wiped out all electronics on the planet permanently missed us by 5 days.
Wow.
And so 5 days earlier, it would have brought us back to the Stone Age, because the way it works and that actually goes us back to the day after. You're not going to remember this moment. In the day after, before the nukes go off, there's a scene which most people don't realize. There's a scene of an EMF pulse being put off in the atmosphere before the nukes go off, because the first thing you do in a nuclear war is you shut off the electronics to the other side. So
communications.
And what they would do is and this is the accuracy of that movie in 1982, whenever it was. The Soviets detonate a nuke. It's a Kansas City or some city like that. They detonate a nuke over the city, like in space, right? And that suddenly all the cars stop working, all electronics stop, so people can't escape. Right?
Wow.
And then the actual mushroom cloud bombs start dropping. So an EMF pulse, whether it's from a nuclear bomb set off 100 miles in space or from the sun, would send us back. And the U.S. Congress has done a report on this. I've read the report. They did a report 10 years ago on this, that the greatest danger to America is an EMF pulse, which would basically, we wouldn't be able to rebuild, because cars would stop functioning, all electronics would stop functioning. So in order to fix all the electronics, you'd have to get from city to city by horseback. That's going to take decades. And so we would refrigerators wouldn't work anymore. All your drugs would get spoiled. People would. The Congress said in an EMF pulse, 90% of America would be dead in 12 months. 90%.
Let me ask you a question. What would you, as a Gen Xer, suggest that people invest in other than Bitcoin if they were afraid of and wanted to prepare for, just in case this ever happened?
Good old gold and silver. It's about, again, going back to the past, right? We love the past. Good old gold and silver, and buy land. I have a friend of mine who left LA and he's got farmland in Virginia now. His family, his relatives think he's crazy, and he's the most rational person there because he's got a fresh stream. There's fish in the stream. He can live on that land if it all comes crashing down. He never has to leave that land. He's got food there. Food.
I was going to say, I wasn't going to say gold and silver. I was going to say land. So we agree on that. Gun, some kind of weapons to protect yourself.
Well, weapons are standard. You got to have that, otherwise you're done.
Right. Yeah. Maybe chickens, maybe some kind of something
chickens, if you've got water. I mean, number one, you've got to find fresh water, right? Having land in the desert's not going to help you. Like land where there's fresh water is going to help you, right? Like my friend has a freshwater stream. He's set. And there's fish in the stream. He's completely set. He's got fresh water to drink from and food in the stream. It's all natural.
Done.
He never has to leave that place. And he's got lots of guns. This is my Muslim friend who's like, he's like, I love these rednecks I'm living next to. They're treating me better than all these Hollywood jerk-offs who kept saying, "Oh, I love you, little brown Muslim guy," right? But he's got little signs on his property that says, warning, you are now trespassing. I can see you in my sniper scope, right?
Wow.
The second line is, at this point, you are now a target, right? If you cross this line, he's got those signs all over his land. He got them from his redneck neighbors, right? And he's like, but he literally has like a rifle with a sniper scope. Like, if anybody crosses in my land, I'll shoot him.
The ones I see here in Texas, a lot of the signs that have a gun and it says, "In this house, we don't call 911."
Well, and that's the thing is, people don't understand that's the norm of human civilization. The brief moment that we created these beautiful towers and we're all sitting around, hanging out in these things, getting truck drivers to bring us our food. That's not normal. Mm-hmm. That's not normal. Normal is you're scrabbling to survive and you live off what you can with your hands. That's normal.
That's normal.
Yes. And
for most
of that, you're going to die.
For most of human existence, that's been normal. We've been living in this weird sort of make-believe kind of a time where we just had so much opulence and so many gifts, and not even, I think for a lot of people, not even recognizing it as being so privileged. And I don't mean privilege in the social justice way about your race or your sex or your identity. I mean just privileged in terms of how many choices we have and opportunities and how much wealth we have, how much convenience. How about that? Privilege in a way of convenience, you know?
Yeah, and it's not, but the thing is, it's happened in history. Whenever civilizations rise, they start off, and that's what the point of the fourth turning is. There's the,
Right.
the generation that starts it off as the pioneers, right? And so that's the process. And there's another great book called the Fate of Empires, which you should read, called by Sir John Glubb. Put it on your.
I've heard of this one. Okay.
The Fate of Empire. Sir John Glubb. So he's an interesting character. He wrote this. He was a British military guy. He ended up, after decolonization, he ended up being commissioned by the Jordanian army to train its army. So he was like a general of the Jordanian army, all right? And he trained their army, and that's actually a really effective army because of this guy. And so Sir John Glubb is this British guy, and he wrote this book as the British Empire was beginning to collapse, as he's watching everything that he grew up with. Britain controlled half the planet. Now they're out of India. Now they're out of the Middle East. Now they're out of this. They're out of that. He's watching it happen, right? The whole thing collapsing in front of him. So he writes his book, which is The Cycles of Empires, called The Fate of Empires. And he has a thesis that every empire has an almost exact to the date 250-year cycle. Again, a cyclical thesis. He wrote this back in the 60s. And his thesis was the first generation at the beginning of the 250-year cycle are the pioneers that are coming out of the collapse of the previous civilization.
Right. Okay.
And they start all over from the beginning, and they start rebuilding, and they're aggressive survivors, and they end up reconquering out of the collapse and making something for themselves. And then the generation after that starts building on it. They become essentially the managers of the wealth. And then after that, the artists start coming, because now it's a prosperous society, right? And then after the artists start coming, you start getting the rich fat cats, right?
This is what happens in neighborhoods. You can see this on a small scale. This is how gentrification happens. It's like first the artists, the hippies move in, the pioneers come first. Nobody's there but the pioneers. Yeah. Right? They go and settle the Wild West.
They kick out whoever's there. That's how it works. And then the next thing, right? That's how it works.
And then the artists come in and they make it cool. And then who comes? The fat cats.
But this is the thing. This is the next stage. This is the turning point stage you talked about in the book. The fat cats don't want to do the hard work that the first three generations did. They want to sit down and be fat and enjoy it, right? So what do? They start bringing in foreigners, people not of the community, to work as their servants. Whether it's slaves or whether it's servants, it's like, okay, we're not going to do this work. Get these Mexican guys to do it. Then the next generation after that, the servants start populating and becoming more and more influential, because the day-to-day activity is now given to them. So they start getting political power, because the civilization won't work. If all the Mexicans went on strike in LA ends today. It just ends. Yeah. It ends. It just it comes to an end. The entire restaurant industry will collapse. The Mexican community that is mistreated so much, and you're in Texas, you see some of this, right? And my mother, she came and she's like, these are the hardest working people I've ever met, these Mexican workers. I've never seen anything like this, right? And if they stopped, it all ends. And then they realize their political power. Then you start having the conflict between the old timers and the new guys they brought in to be their workers, who realize the power is shifting, right? Then suddenly the resentment towards the worker class starts, and then the bigotry towards them starts. But it's too late now, because these fat cats are too weak to fight that. And you begin to see the collapse of the civilization that was built by the fat cats' great-great-grandparents. Yeah. I mean, and one of the things he talks about is when the fat cats start freaking out, they start building walls, thinking that's going to stop it. And that's the last stage before it's like, when you start building the wall, you're already finished. You ain't going to stop human migration through a wall. It's not going to happen. The Chinese tried it. The Mongolians were already over the wall. It's too late. These Dion, right now, they built this wall. It doesn't stop nothing in Palestine. Nothing. But that's the moment you're like, you've lost complete control. So you try to stop a historical force that's beyond your ability to stop.
And it's too late. Dion just says, Dion is the lady of perfectly appropriate quotes. And she just put one in the chat. Adversity makes men and prosperity makes monsters. Victor Hugo.
That is correct. And that's why I think our traditional religions kept emphasizing things like spiritual discipline, like fasting, like the Ramadan is coming in 2 weeks. I haven't fasted in a long time. I'm going to make every effort, God willing, this year to actually fast the full month, right? Fasting is very hard for me, but I got to do it, because it's a self-denial of the comforts we're talking about, and it's teaching of self-discipline, right? Yes. Our religions have this for a reason, because it's the rich people, the fat people, that need to fast. If we, this whole COVID thing, if we didn't have an obese society, it would have gone right through us without a problem, right?
But when does Ramadan start?
It starts this year, probably on April 3rd. It's based on the lunar sighting.
Okay.
If the new moon is sighted on, it will likely be sighted on the night of April 2nd. And so
Okay.
it'll start on April 3rd. And so I'll be doing my best, and it ain't easy. No food, water, or sex during dawn to sunset. So it's sex.
But you can choose other things that you're giving up. Like you're going to give up.
Well, I mean, yeah, the idea is people then just like people do for Lent. I'm giving us the idea.
Right.
This is the time you got to focus on your spirituality. You're just required no food, water, or sex during daylight hours, right? And this year it's going to be probably about 12 hours a day, right? And the water is hard for a lot of people, but you do it. I've seen NBA players play games fasting without water.
It's during daylight hours. Can I tell you? So I was living in I lived in Tanzania for half a year when I was in college, and spent the last couple of weeks in Zanzibar, which is right off the coast, and it's very high Muslim population. And so I was there during Ramadan, and what would happen is at night, so everybody was fasting during the day, and then at night, you're on an island, it's right in the ocean, right? At night, there would be these wonderful seafood just feasts on the beach.
Oh, every night, it's a 30-night feast. I mean, and a gentleman just asked, actually, and I responded in the chat, that he's like, well, why do Muslims gorge themselves? I was like, it's like, yeah, we gorge ourselves before. First of all, you're required in the morning before dawn to eat, because you're not here to torture your body. You need food, right? You eat enough for the day and water, and then you don't eat for 12 hours, right? And then at night you party. So it's a huge celebration in the Muslim world. In LA, it'll just be like, oh, go hang out and say hello to the homeless guy, right? So yeah, but it's every night in the Muslim world, Zanzibar, it's a 30-night feast. And that's good because, it is hard. People are like, oh, I can get up at 5 in the morning and have a full dinner and whatever. You think you can. Try it. Try it one day. And this is, look, in the Bible, this is the Yom Kippur fast. It's done for one day, and it's structured exactly like this, right? And it's hard. My Jewish friends who do it, it's hard. It's like Mardi Gras before Lent. Yeah, because you have to have a balance, because no successful religious culture can survive if it's all about self-abnegation and despair. It's all of our successful religions are about balance, which is where our society is out of balance, right? So that's why you need these things.
Yeah. This is off subject. I'm just going to read it because it makes me happy. Dan Trainer says, I started reading Crime and Punishment last night. Awesome. We just read that and for book club, and it was amazing.
You're reading a Russian writer?
Right.
You are such a traitor. This National Science Association, Space Association, has now delisted Yuri Gagarin as from the first human being in space, and they've taken away Yuri Gagarin for political reasons. Like, dude, you could take him off the list. It don't change the fact this dude is the first human being in space. Are you crazy? I mean, he's a hero not for the Soviet Union. He's the hero for mankind.
It is reached
off the craziest thing on the planet. He went into space when it was impossible.
I know, but Cameron, they're also banning Russian cats from cat comp shows, and it's just ridiculous. Let's not even go down that rabbit hole, because I do want to get back to this fun article. So number 3, Cole, we're back to the article. Scroll down. These are values of Gen X that would help in the current culture wars. Number 3, just say whatever. Two of the most popular Gen X phrases were whatever and talk to the hand, because the face don't give a damn. That's right.
I just want to take one moment. There's a gentleman in the chat who's talking about
Do it.
He keeps talking about fasting, and I think he's coming from a critical point of view.
Oh, go right ahead.
And so, look, my brother, he just wrote, this Daniel Harp gentleman wrote in there, is like, well, Jesus condemns fasting to be seen by others. The implication of your thing is you're presuming that we Muslims fast to be seen by others. And anyone in any religion who's fasting or praying or doing anything to be seen by others, guess what? Is condemned by their own religion.
Yes.
It's in Islam. So if the idea is like, well, all we Muslims are fasting to be seen by others. I'm here in LA. Nobody's seeing me, man. Nobody's seeing me. And I'm doing it because I want to discipline myself, and learn what it's like to be poor for a little bit. Hungry people in this world, they fast whether they like it or not, right? Yeah. And so if the point of because I've seen a series of tweets from you, if the point is to critique Islam, you can keep critiquing it, but I think it's more projection of the fact that it's not your religion, and so you're projecting your own negative perceptions about people in that community. Don't do that. I'm not doing that to Christians. If that's what's happening here, because I keep seeing your comments, when a Christian tells me they're fasting for Lent, I don't go, well, he's just doing that because he was raised as a Catholic. I'm like, good. I'm glad you're doing something that's working for you. So why don't we get to that place?
I actually, you're making me think of, because I was talking about with someone recently who is agnostic, about some of the Bible verses in Christianity about people who pray on street corners so they might be seen praying, like the hypocrites, right? And I was talking to him about, like, it doesn't mean that public prayer.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean that public prayer is bad. It doesn't mean that you can't profess your faith publicly, or you shouldn't. What it means is, wait, just let me fit real quick. That's okay. What it means is that it's about your intent. If your intent is if you're doing it so because you want to be seen as a good person, if it's that self-fulfilling thing where you're feeding yourself and your own ego, and the entire point is to affect what people think of you, that's when it's wrong, man. It's like public prayer is not bad in and of itself. It's when the public prayer is just, it's like virtue signal. It's like people that put a black square on their profile so that they may be seen by men as being a good person. You know what I mean?
Or they put a noon, which is the Arabic letter for N, just to show everybody, look, I support the Christians. Well, guess what? I support Christians too, and I'm Muslim, And so it's in my religion, and we can get back onto our main topic. In the Quran, the munafiqun, which is the word for hypocrites, the munafiqun are the most highly condemned. These are people in the Muslim community that are doing exactly what this gentleman is critiquing.
What is the word?
Munafiq means hypocrite, and in the Islamic tradition, the munafiqs are the lowest in hell. They're the
wow,
bottom, because they're the ones because they corrupt religion. They guide other people away from it. People go, this guy's just a fraud. I guess religion must be, right? If that's what this is all about. And so people say they're the worst because they are Satan's effort to mislead people in the veil of holiness. So that's in the Christian tradition, and it's all over the Quran. So any religion that works doesn't promote hypocrisy.
You know what? There's verses like that in Christianity too, because I've thought about this a lot lately, that hypocrites, people that are con artists, especially within a faith system, they are, they're not just, somebody in our community said this, they're not just wolves in sheep's clothing, they're wolves in shepherd's clothing.
And that's even worse. Because the sheep is now trusting. The wolf in sheep clothing is just another buddy with me, right? This is the person you're trusting to protect you.
Yes.
Right? And they're leading you astray. So, of course, that idea and what Jesus was condemning, it's not like this first time it has happened was, 25 AD, right? This has happened throughout human history, right? Moses was dealing with this, right? This is a human thing of people. That's the whole thing of the Moses and the golden calf. Who are the people that worship the golden calf? They were the hypocrites amongst the people of Israel. The moment Moses is out of the picture, their true nature comes out and they lead everybody astray, right? And Moses kills them all. He kills like 3,000, right? It's not exactly, he's like, well, he's like, he kills them. And so all of our religions have these characters. And it's very important. And this will bring us back now to full circle that we're talking about here, which is the thing that I think delineates Generation X is we can't stand hypocrisy. We've seen it.
Yes, we can't. By the way, Daniel tells you, indeed, the intent of all religious activities is important. I didn't mean to throw shade. Just seems like fasting should include less eating, more praying. I will just say this as someone who is in Zanzibar during Ramadan. The feasting was so much fun, though.
You gotta have that stress. You gotta have the stress. But yes, look, and in Islam we teach there are people that fast in Ramadan that get nothing out of it. They get nothing out of it except a hungry stomach, right? Because they're not getting any spiritual benefit from it. To them, they are the people that are doing it because everyone else is doing it. I got to do it too. I got to fit in, right? Or they're the people who are just like, whatever, fine, I'll do this. But the time is supposed to be spend your time on God. This is 1 month in the year that you're gonna shut off the system. That's why I'm like, I'm out of YouTube. I'm going to get off of social media. This is a chance to just shut off and focus on God and show yourself you can do it. You can live the rest of the year like this.
Yeah. Well, plus here's the thing about the feasting. And I think about this when it comes to any kind of celebration involving people of faith is it's not just about the food. Like when I was there, it was this sort of there's this celebration feeling. There's this community coming together, this celebratory thing, and sharing in something with community.
And you've been through a communal experience, which was a difficult experience, and now you can rejoice in it. That's why all the biblical feasts come as after some kind of fast or some other religious ceremony, right? They're there to really celebrate what you all just went through.
And I was a total outsider in many ways. I was a Westerner. I was white. I was not Muslim. But even being an outsider, there was this feeling of just like generosity and a generosity of spirit. And it wasn't just about the delicious food. It was just about celebrating with people.
Well,
And
in the Islamic tradition, food is viewed very much as a spiritual thing. For example, in India, how did Islam spread in India? It didn't spread through people conquering it. Muslims remained less than 10% of the population the whole time, even while they ruled it, which was for like 1,000 years. It was spread primarily through Muslims would go into these villages of the untouchables, in the Hindu caste system, the very bottom of the untouchables, which you can't even they're essentially like slaves. You can't even deal with them. If they come in the presence of a Brahmin, they'll be killed, right? That's how literally they're untouchables. And they would go to their villages and they would sit in the middle of the village and open up set up a fire and start cooking and invite everyone to the village. Just eat. You're our brothers. This was incomprehensible to these people who were part of a rigid caste system that you could eat with them. And that's how these people largely, one of the insult that Hindu nationalists often use about Muslims from the subcontinent is, oh, you're just all low caste converts, because they know that's kind of how it spreads. You got all these slaves that we fed food to. Your tradition was treating them with disrespect. Another tradition came in and gave them food. Of course they're going to go join that thing. So, and that's, and as any Christian knows, food, Jesus is feeding, the loaves. It's a central miracle, right?
Yeah.
Food is central.
I was rereading part of Exodus this weekend, and it's the part where God has led the people out of slavery, and he's honored what he promised. But then people are starting to grumble in the desert. And there's this part where he's like, listen, Moses, just tell him I'm going to rain bread on him. Okay. And he does. Want to rain bread on you. Just calm down. Okay.
It's all good. Okay. But we talk about stuff, and that's the great thing about this channel is we can talk about all the social political stuff. But you and I are both believers, and I'm never going to be ashamed about talking about faith, right?
I love that.
Faith in general, because this is what we need. We need this stuff. Otherwise, we're stuck with this world created by the millennials.
Plus, we should be able to talk about differing beliefs without just so much of what so much of the culture that the millennials has created is about not having conversation, not discussing things, especially if you have different foundational beliefs.
Exactly. And it's about covering up our differences to pretend we're the same, right?
Yes.
And that's not reality. And that only creates bitterness, resentment, bigotry, because you're not able to express it, right? And like we just had, I want to thank Daniel, who said something that I thought was, because I've been on places where people are like, oh, your religion sucks. So I'm glad that wasn't your comments weren't being motivated from that. And I'm glad you said that. And I apologize too if I presented it that way. And forgive me, that's coming from my own experiences. So many times I deal with chat, people like, here's this Muslim guy, let's tell him what we think, right? And so forgive me that I went to that place, but this is how conversation happens. You said something, I interpreted it a certain way, you clarified it, and we're all good.
Plus, I like, one of the things I like about talking about our differences, or just with people in general when I have conversations, is I like finding, if you can find out where your differences are, sometimes that's the easiest. But then after that, you can find out where you overlap, and that's what's the most interesting. What do you have in common despite having such different, sometimes very different worldviews?
Because of the distinction, you first feel a little distant from the person, and then the overlap brings you together. And you don't lose your authenticity. You don't become what the other person is, but you start feeling a human empathy and connection to them.
Yes. Okay.
Let's keep going.
Just say whatever.
Just say whatever. But that's exactly it. It's like, you saw how I've been reacting every time you're like, global warming. I'm like, whatever. Okay. You see, that's what I've been like, whatever. Here we go. That's my reaction. That's actually the word I've been saying on this podcast, right? Is whatever. It's just like, here we go. Somebody spouting all this blah, 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 whatever. Because it's just a bunch of hot air. You've been forced to listen to this, like you've been forced in the Breakfast Club to listen to your dumb, boomer teacher lecturing you about, you have to have this and that if you want to succeed, son. You're like, whatever.
Okay, so if I've taken one thing from this article, it's that I fully intend to bring back the phrase "talk to the hand." So I'm going to start using that.
Perfect. That was our generation. Black women started it, I think, in our generation, and they knew how to do it, right?
I'm bringing it back, baby.
He's like, okay. We're just tired of hearing this. Like, oh my god, it's like these memes. Like, do you see that meme now with the NPC characters going, "I support the newest thing," whatever the newest thing the media tells us, right? And so it's just like, I don't hear it anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to hear about whatever crusade you're on. I don't care.
Excuse me. I think we should call this episode "Talk to the Hand." Okay, number 2.
That would be great. You talk to the hand.
Yeah, number 2. Here we go.
Mysticism of that. Can I give you that? The hand in the Middle Eastern traditions, historically, and that includes Christianity, represents a symbol of God's protection. right? And if you go in Judaism and Islam, we still do have the Hamsa, which is the symbol of protection, which is the five hand, which is seen as, in Judaism it's called the Eye of Miriam, and Islam is called the Eye of Fatima. But usually it's an amulet that has, if you do, you can probably pull it up on a Google search, the Hamsa, KHAMC.
Oh, I've seen it. There's like an eye there,
There's like
right?
a beautiful, usually a turquoise eye or something in between. But the idea is this five-fingered hand and an eye in between, and it's used as a symbol. It's pre-biblical tradition. They found this in like ancient North Africa, ancient Northeast before the Bible, right? So it's been part of that region of the hand as a protection. And if you story the story of Moses in the Bible, and there's a similar story in the Quran where one of the first signs, most people don't remember the sign in the Bible, before Moses throws down his staff and it becomes a snake, the first thing he does is he puts his hand into his breast, pulls it out, and it's shining white. That's the first sign that he gives Pharaoh. All right. And that's the first sign, right? And it's a protection from all these little forces that he's surrounding. He's entering to the Pharaoh's thing where he's a wanted murderer, right? And he's coming in, he does that first before he does anything else. And so the hand, talk to the hand, is us saying, yeah, talk to God, get me out of this.
I like the things that tumble out of your heads.
I just made that up right now. It feels true.
You have a very interesting mind. Okay, number 2. Here we go. Bring back snobbery. Now, again, anybody that's just tuning in.
Oh my God.
Wait. Anybody that's just tuning in, this is a list of Gen X values that would help us in the current culture wars. So number 2, bring back snobbery. What were you going to say?
I mean, I say bluntly, I say I'm a snob. I say it all the time because it's linked to talk to the hand. I don't have time for this garbage. I don't have time for garbage from stupid people. And the only way I can say that is to know who is a stupid person. And by acknowledging who's a stupid person, I'm inherently a snob because that's the truth of it. I don't have time for this crap. You're a moron. I'm not going to listen to you.
I'm going to read some of this one because I completely agree with this. Good taste used to matter. In the 2000s, millennials decided that people have the right to like what they like and that it's worse to judge someone's personal taste than to have bad taste. Gen Xers based their entire personalities on taste and demanded integrity from artists and were rewarded by living in a time of superior films and music. That is 100% true.
We didn't take garbage. Well, I'm not going to watch that. What is this crap?
Yeah. These days, no one listens to new music. True. And we're stuck. We're stuck in a world dominated by comic book movies because no one stood up and shamed people for liking low effort culture.
But that's it. But look, why were people so upset by the bad Star Wars? Because the millennials were all like, The Last Jedi is the greatest movie ever made. Man, it's a bad movie. It's the worst movie I've ever seen. And I've worked in the film industry 20 years. It's a bad movie. But you're like, well, it cuts this important theme about social justice. Who cares about your stupid theme? It's a bad movie. And that's why we got upset about it.
Cameron, what's the last good movie you saw?
Well, good movie. I mean, I have to say I like the Batman. I thought it was a perfect good movie.
Okay.
Blah blah. All the one comment about white people. Who cares? It's a 4-hour movie. It's a long movie, and I thought it was very, very entertaining. It's the most real Batman movie I've seen, and that includes the Nolan movies, which I liked. It feels like this is really happening. It feels like this is what would happen if Manhattan Batman showed up, right? And it's got a really great vibe to it. The casting, in my opinion, is absolutely perfect. They got Zoe Kravitz is perfect as Catwoman. She's wonderful. And, even Robert Pattinson, who a lot of people were very skeptical about, when he's Batman, you're like, that's Batman.
I heard he did a good job.
Yeah.
This comment is making me laugh. So I have to put this on the screen. Wait, what happened to it? It was a funny comment about you.
Don't delete it.
Oh, here it is.
Okay.
It's like having a wild bobcat on when Cameron's here.
It's true. It's true. Because I don't care. I don't care what you think. Talk to the hand.
Talk to the hand. Somebody else said, I think I saw Therese in there, and she said, I love Cameron. Yeah, she did. So there was one other thing that was related. Let's see. Oh, good taste. This is great. This is so true. Lettuce says, good taste implies a standard for excellence. Yes, that's exactly why woke, they don't believe in good taste because they say everything is equal. There's no standard. They don't believe in meritocracy. They don't believe in some things being better than others, some art being better than other art.
The rich dude who wants to make sure the rest of you remain slaves. That's the dude that promotes that, right? Because he's like, there's no standard except I stay rich and you all stay equally poor. That's the standard, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we've made it down to number 1. Again, this is a list of values, Gen X values that would help in the current climate. Number one, political apathy. Political apathy.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't care. We didn't care. Reagan won, Mondale won. We're like, these guys both, these guys ain't serving us. They're serving whoever put them in power. We knew that, right? Right.
Mhm.
And so it's just like, this was the Clinton started the millennial hope and dream, the man from hope. Remember that campaign, the man from hope? Reagan was just like, I'm just gonna fix this crap that I've got to deal with. That's all he was about, right? But he was hopeful, but it wasn't the man from hope. Reagan was all about city on a hill kind of imagery about America, and Clinton was all about, look at me, I'm this handsome dude who's got all these hot chicks chasing him, and I'm the man from hope. And then Obama takes that to the next level. He's like, I'm the man of destiny, right?
I don't remember the man from Hope with Clinton, but I do remember Obama with the big hope thing at the bottom.
Yeah.
Shepard Fairey.
That little that very well done painting that they had. Whatever. It's these kids have been told that the politicians are going to save you. That's what these millennials believe.
Yes, I used
Hillary
to believe
Clinton
that.
gets elected, it's going to be better, and then they did it. If Joe Biden gets elected, it's going to be better. This whole country's falling apart. I mean, it's like, I want to go back to Jimmy Carter, man. Bring Jimmy Carter back. I mean, he was a good guy. I'll take that.
Bring back the peanut farmer.
Yeah, bring that dude. He didn't have a son who's like, got some strange stuff on his laptop. He was just a dude, right? I think Jimmy Carter's biggest sin is like, well, I admit that I lust after women, and oh, what a terrible thing he said. Whatever. I mean, bring back Jimmy Carter. But that's what these kids are watching. They're like, why is a hamburger cost $10 now? Right?
Yeah.
Why can't I have to wear this mask and they don't have to wear this mask? Why is my teacher crazy? Why is my teacher telling me that I'm a boy when I'm a girl, right? And because I'm a tomboy and I like to play sports. Why is this happening to me, right? And so they're like, oh, these authority figures are all idiots.
Yeah, dude, let me tell you, speaking of rising prices,
Yes.
I just filled up my truck actually, I didn't fill it up because I only had $40 cash to spend on it. I went in, usually, here's $40 that used to fill up my truck, half a tank of gas.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Just crazy. And that, if people don't think that, I mean, I know the rich, the elite right now are saying, like, people need to stop complaining and suck it up and make sacrifice. Like, if you don't think that's going to really impact people's lives and their, driving to work and the bottom line and being able to provide for their kids, like, you're so out of touch.
Well, it's completely out of touch. It's like these idiots saying, well, just get a Tesla. I was like, okay, a Tesla costs what, $80,000, and there's like a 2-year waiting list. Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna, the kid working on Starbucks, I'm sure that's gonna help him. Yeah,
right. Mary D says, I love Cameron. He's so speedy. I learned so much about religion and culture in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's it. I believe in the fire hose method of teaching. You get it all in one.
Okay, I just want to read a little bit of this number one. So number one value that Gen X would, that we should impart on people today, political apathy. America's political divide has calcified over the past decade because more and more people are basing their personal identities on their politics. This is true. This has created a culture where the dialogue between liberals and conservatives has become a shouting match that only makes people dig their heels in further. I want to say something about this. I just interviewed last week. I got to interview this therapist, Jake Wiskerson. I mispronounced it. But he was talking about this and how when you start to view your belief system or your ideas, your ideology as your identity, then you're going to feel personally attacked whenever anybody disagrees with your ideas because you're so personally invested in those ideas and you don't separate them from who you are as a person. And that's exactly what millennials do.
No, that's exactly it. And the problem with that is that, as we know, because we've been through this on our own growth, and your beliefs change. Perfect example, Carrie, right? Your beliefs change and grow. And if your identity is based on a belief, it's an idol. And when you start resisting it, you start having internal conflict that leads to crisis, that leads to serious emotional crisis. When your soul is waking up and saying, what I believe is wrong, well, you fight it, right? And it leads to a lot of the pathologies and a lot of the fanaticism. In my experience, having been a religious fanatic myself once, having been that, fanaticism of any kind, religious, political, it's the same thing. Fanaticism of a belief comes from your own inner conflict because you don't really believe it. You're trying to convince yourself. And so you have to convince everybody else.
Yes. I read a quote when I was just coming out of my old belief system. This is a while back, and it was by David Brooks, who I don't often agree. I disagree with him as much as I agree with him. But I read this quote of his that was something like, people who substitute their political beliefs for spirituality end up becoming fanatics. And that really stuck with me because I was thinking that's sort of what I had been. I was fanatical about social justice because it was a stand-in for spirituality, for belief in God, for all of it.
It's a religion. And the worst thing is
Yes.
it's a religion of flawed human beings. So it will collapse because it's a religion where you have, these cheap politicians who are hypocrites and banging hookers on the side are your leaders, right? And so there's no archetypal. You can believe that all these religions are man-made and Jesus never existed and all that. It doesn't matter. What matters, the point of Life of Pi, is that these are stories that work, right? That's what matters. And so the stories are not. Jesus ain't a cheap politician, right? And in the story, and he's something that's an archetypal idea that you can aspire to as a Christian, right? And so you can aspire to being like, this, I can't even pronounce his name, Pete Buttigieg. How do I pronounce that dude's name? Right? I can't. Who's like telling everybody go get a Tesla. Buddy G. I don't know what this guy is. I don't know. I'm not president. I mean, whatever. You can aspire to this clown who's like, well, my husband just had a baby, whatever. And then I'm going to take off for 3 months and not do my job. I'm like, what? How are you going to aspire to people like this, right? And so that's a sickness of all of these secular religions, and that leads to Maoism ultimately, which is the ultimate. Maoism is where Bolshevikism goes all the way to the very end, which is pure. Let's kill 60 million people for the fun of it, right? Yeah, and that's where it takes it.
I know where it's like the Cain and Abel story in the Bible, and Peterson talks about this a lot. Jordan Peterson, it's about that story and how the path of Cain, which is that path of resentment, and sort of what you're saying, it leads to what? Genocidal rage, murderous rage. It leads to a very dark place. Cole, I want to ask, let's take this article down. And do I still have you, Cameron, for like another 15 minutes?
I got 20 minutes and I do have to head out. So we got 20 minutes.
Okay, 20 minutes. Let's go out on some more of these memes. If you could pull up that because this is fun. We'll show. So I sent Cole this Upworthy link that's just memes, and you haven't seen these yet. So, or maybe you have, but I didn't send it to you. So some of these will be new, and it'll be fun. There have been so many. When I told people I was going to do a Gen X show, and then I started seeing more and more of these, and people sent me some.
Oh, these great memes. They just tell the truth in an image, right?
Okay, so for anybody listening at home, this is a picture of Donald Trump, and he looks very angry. He's pointing at the sky. It says boomers. And then there's a picture of Mark Zuckerberg also looking very angry and frowning. It says millennials. And then there's a picture of Wayne from Wayne's World. It says Gen X, and he's doing a thumbs up.
I mean, look, Wayne's World said it all. You see a hot girl, you go swing. Let's just be real here. You go swing. If she was president, she'd be Abraham Lincoln. I mean, come on.
So inappropriate.
He's just speaking the truth. Swing.
Okay, let's go to the next one. He went in close up on Trump. Yeah, that face.
I want to thank Mr. Trump for giving us his vaccine.
Okay.
That's another conversation.
Okay, so this is another one that's from Star Wars, and you've got Darth Vader fighting with Luke, and Darth Vader's the boomers, and Luke is the millennials, and then down below you've got Han Solo like
and he's doing whatever. Like, I'm taking control of the Death Star station, whatever.
Gen X.
yeah, that's what happened. That's exactly it. Well, that's why we identify with Solo, right?
Yes, completely Gen X. I like the energy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I agree with this one. I
didn't react as well to this. This just doesn't feel real to me. I'll tell you.
No, let's
analyze it. Why it's a mistake. Let's analyze it.
Yeah. Okay. So anybody just listening, this is a picture from Joker, and it's Joker looking at something burning, and I think that's Heath Ledger's Joker, and it says Boomer versus Millennials. Gen X just wants to watch the world burn. I don't agree with this. I would say Gen X is apathetic and desensitized, but they're not nihilists.
No, not nice. We've accepted the world is burning, right? That whole thing. We didn't start the fire, right? We've accepted this. This is something we have no power over. We don't want it to burn. We don't want our world to always be hard, but that's all we've ever known. And we're watching these two clowns who are claiming to be firefighters who are igniting this blaze. And we're like, all right, whatever. You guys want to make it worse? At least we see the truth of it. We don't want it to burn. That's the mistake. Because I had a reaction when this came up. It didn't feel real to me.
Yeah, this one I don't. Let's do a meme reaction. Two thumbs down.
Two thumbs down. Go ahead. Okay. All right.
This is good. This is good. Okay, we got the two screaming ladies again. We got the screaming cat lady, and we got the screaming Xena, boomers and millennials, and then down below you got Jeff Bridges from The Big Lebowski smoking a doobie, and it says Gen X.
Generation, it's just like whatever, man. That's just your opinion, right? That's the line. Whatever, man. That's your opinion, right? And so it is what it is, because this is us, right? It's just like, because all you hear are people screaming all the time. Eventually you zone out. You're like, I don't want to hear this anymore. That's why the image is so real. Like, I don't want to hear this anymore. They're all just screaming all the time.
Yeah, this is a thumbs up for me.
Yeah.
And Tara, she agrees with this, by the way. She says, no, we are all rolling our eyes at watching the boomers and millennials burning the world.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's what we're doing. What we got here?
This is
you two monkeys fight. We're gonna have fun. Yeah.
This is the Simpsons one, where you got all the Simpsons characters are in a half circle and they're all placing bets, and in the middle you got two monkeys fighting, the millennials and the boomers. This is the best one yet.
I mean, it's true. We're like, watch these two idiots destroy each other. You want to make money out of it?
I love your laugh. Okay. Okay, then we got a new one. Rage Against the Machine reunites. And then it says dudes around 40 years old. And it's a picture of Ron Swanson running through the forest.
Because also Rage Against the Machine is now out there like, well, you can't come to our concerts unless you got the pharmaceutical pass, right? It's just like, that's Rage Against the Machine. I mean, whatever. I mean, so yeah. But that's the example. Yeah, it's just like, I guess you guys forgot what you are. Whatever. Maybe
Dan Trainer says this one's not funny. I agree.
Yeah, it's not like, funny. Whatever.
Yeah.
Down.
No laughs.
Yeah. After that incredible Simpsons one, it's just when they're just cheering on with their buddy. That's how I see these idiots, just two monkeys.
Okay, well, this is kind of maybe.
It's not that funny, but it's true.
Yeah, it's the lady screaming at the cat one, and it says Gen Z is the lady screaming at the cat, and she says Gen X is the Karen generation. And then the cat is Gen X, says, joke's on you, B word, Gen X is back in the game. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not funny. It's true.
And it doesn't really make sense, because I don't think they accuse us of being the Karens. We're not the people snitching on our neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing. I mean, we're definitely back in the game, but we're not Karens. You know, we literally like, we don't care. Karens care too much. Mm-hmm. So that's
down, thumbs down. Yeah, G-Man.
Some millennial doesn't understand.
Yeah, G-Man says I don't really get that.
Or maybe that's a millennial kid, whatever. We got this one here. Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's whatever.
Let's move on.
Yeah, that's not that's boring.
Yeah, boring. First of all, you don't make people read this much when you do memes.
Yeah, that's the point of the genius of the memes. You got the Simpsons guy. I couldn't stop laughing. All you need is to see those guys standing there with their buddy and two monkeys fighting. That's all you need. You know, just images like that thing with Trump and and it's just like whatever. You see, this is being done by people that don't know how to meme. All right.
Okay, this is better. Fewer words.
It's fine.
It's okay. Yeah, it says boomer humor, I hate my wife. Millennial humor, I hate my life. Gen X humor, and it's just John Travolta from Pulp Fiction standing there going, huh?
What's going on?
It's okay.
Fuck, nah. Okay, middle.
Talk to the hand.
Yeah. It's like, okay. All right. I don't know what the point of that one was, but all right, whatever.
Tree Surgeon says, I'm here to lead, not to read. Okay, do we have any more, Cole?
Do we have any more?
We'll see.
Can you email me that Simpsons one? Because I'm going to put it in my file. I have a file of like fun memes that I keep, right? It's always I'm going to use. I never use them. I just keep them. It's like, you know what there are? They're like that NFT that you think is going to be worth millions of dollars someday. See, this NFT thing is the example of millennials like saying, oh, this is the next. I literally got an email from somebody. He's like, oh, we want you to be part of our NFT company. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that, right? Because to me, it's like a millennial fraud thing, right? I mean, to me, it's obviously self-evidently fraud, right? But it's but the millennials are all like, this is the wave of the future, right? And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. Because my whole generation, I was like, so you got this NFT here of this monkey, right? Of this badly drawn monkey bought from somebody for $100,000, and you're hoping somebody pays you $200,000 for that. That sounds like a scam.
That's exactly what NFT sounds like. You just described it the best way possible. It's people selling memes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, look, I get it. And people are like, well, no, it's a modern form of art. I was like, no, a Van Gogh is worth something, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're looking at the incredible craftsmanship, and to own the original of Starry Night, I'd pay $100 million for that, or $1 billion for that, because it's incredible craftsmanship, and you get to physically touch what Van Gogh touched with his own fingers. So that's worth money to me. This NFT digital thing that, look, I'm the only one, I've got the original monkey with a hat on. What is that worth to anybody?
Nobody, nothing. Yeah, Benjamin says, LOL, NFT millennial fraud sounds about right.
Just like, I'm just sitting there like, okay, you think I'm a sucker? I know you're suckers, but I ain't that much of a sucker. So here we go. All right.
Oh, we got one more meme.
Okay. This is truth. This is truth.
This is good. This is from the Brady Bunch, and we got Marsha there. It says boomers, and she says, I'm so popular. And then you got little Cindy. It says millennials, I'm so cute. And then you got Gen X, I hate this effing family.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what the role she played in that show. So that's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's accurate. Okay. That's good. All right. Cool.
Somebody look me.
Anything else we got on our slate for 10 minutes? What do you got?
Oh, for 10 minutes? No, I'm so happy to talk to you. I just want to do some announcements, and you can tell people where to find you again before we pop out. Yeah. So this is a new channel. If it came up in your feed, your algorithm, and you're listening to it for the first time, it's called Deprogrammed with Carrie Smith. You can hit subscribe. If you like it, share it online, or just secretly share it with a friend. And if you want to help us support the show financially, you can do that at Locals, Subscribestar, or Patreon. We're going to be doing book club and Locals for members only for financial donations. And I think the lowest amount is like $5. And then what else? We're going to be doing movie night. We've got a couple of other things in the works, and I'm really excited. And I just appreciate you guys hanging out today. And Cameron, tell people where they can find you.
Well, first, let's respond to this.
Oh, hey, Cheeky Mare. She says, I'm behind and listening at 2 times the speed. Maybe the show name should be Talk to the Hand. Do I win the knife? Oh, yeah. That's what we said.
But I can't imagine watching me at 2 speed. I mean, I'm like at 2 speed anyway, and now you're watching me at 4 speed.
You're at 4 speed. Oh, well, that's one more thing I have to say then.
Yes.
We have a contest going, and I said I was going to announce the winner today, but I'm not, because I have to still read through all the submissions. Mm-hmm. We're looking for a new name for the live show, and if you drop it in the comments on this video, I'm looking all the way back for the past week, and the intention now, we're going to announce on Friday the winner. You get a beautiful custom-made, handmade knife from Greg Wilson. Wow. The winner of the naming contest.
That's going to help you when you're out on your land protecting yourself from the bears and the trespassers.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Cool. That's okay. Where can they find you, Cameron?
Well, I'll drop it in the link before I take off. But it's I have a Patreon / my name, Kamran Pasha, KamranPasha. There you can hear all my uncensored thoughts on Hollywood, on current world situation, and then also you can reach out to me if you're a novelist or a screenwriter or aspiring to be such. I do consulting through the Patreon, and so far I've done about 30 from there, and people are happy enough that they pay me more money and they want more consulting. So that seems to be working because I'm actually a published novelist and a successful screenwriter, and people like me generally don't do consulting outside of the system. Like, we'll consult for other screenwriters, but not for like normies trying to break into the system. And since I consider myself still a normie who's somehow broken into the system, I try to offer that. So so I'll drop that link in there, and I hope we can do one more, because Ramadan is going to be in 2 weeks. If maybe next Monday, if you have time, maybe we'll do it one more time, because then I'll be off the month. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do it.
It's good.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you guys. Thanks for hanging out. Somebody said 2 times the speed is fun. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go out. We're going to have a end credits video soon, but until then, I'm going to roll this video with my husband's music one more time. Here we go. Thank you guys.